Welcome to the Docket. I'm your host, Corey Snow. This is episode 32. In December 2024, the Committee on Ethics of the U.S. House of Representatives released a report on its investigation of former Congressman Matt Gaetz, looking into allegations of sexual misconduct, drug use, statutory rape, and violations of House rules, as well as other allegations. This is an audio presentation of that committee report. Because the full duration of the recording is around 90 minutes, it has been broken up into 4 episodes, each one being a recording of one major section of the report. All episodes were published together. This episode is a recording of Section 4, Factual Background. 4. Factual Background. A. Allegations of sexual misconduct and drug use. On March 30th, 2021, the New York Times reported that Representative Gaetz was under investigation by DOJ for possible violation of sex trafficking laws. The investigation reportedly related to allegations that Representative Gaetz had a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old and paid for her to travel with him. On April 1, 2021, additional reporting indicated the federal investigation included allegations involving cash payments, the use of illegal substances, the recruitment of women online for sex, and the use of campaign funds to pay for travel for women. The DOJ investigation was part of an ongoing inquiry involving a former county tax collector in Florida named Joel Greenberg, who was sentenced to 11 years in prison in 2022. 1. Representative Gaetz's arrangement with Joel Greenberg. The committee's record shows that shortly after he was sworn into Congress in 2017, Representative Gaetz became friends with Mr. Greenberg, who had also recently taken office as the Seminole County tax collector. According to Mr. Greenberg, the two met at the house of Christopher Dorworth, a Florida lobbyist. Mr. Greenberg and Representative Gaetz frequently attended parties and other gatherings with young women in attendance. Many of those women were initially contacted by Mr. Greenberg via the website seekingarrangement.com, now seeking.com, and Mr. Greenberg subsequently introduced the women to Representative Gaetz. Seekingarrangement.com advertised itself as a sugar dating website that primarily connected older men and younger women seeking mutually beneficial relationships. The website was generally understood by many of the women interviewed by the committee to involve, at minimum, an exchange of companionship for money. There have been prosecutions against individuals for sex trafficking that originated with contacts made through seekingarrangement.com or similar websites, and some have called for the website to be shut down due to its facilitation of prostitution. Platforms such as seekingarrangement.com are known to make it easier for traffickers to exploit victims and connect with buyers. The committee did not receive any evidence that Representative Gaetz had his own account on seekingarrangement.com. Mr. Greenberg indicated he frequently showed the site to Representative Gaetz and that he provided his login credentials to Representative Gaetz. According to Mr. Greenberg, he and Representative Gaetz would split the costs of, quote, drugs, hotels, and girls, end quote. For example, the committee reviewed evidence that such activity occurred in July 2017. Specifically, evidence showed that Representative Gaetz, Mr. Greenberg, and others gathered at a rental property located in the Brickell neighborhood of Miami, Florida, for a weekend beginning on July 7, 2017. Representative Gaetz and Mr. Greenberg also spent time in Fort Lauderdale during the Miami stay, during which time Representative Gaetz withdrew at least $1,200 in cash from 3 different accounts at a single ATM. On June 22, 2017, Representative Gaetz paid $6,308 for that rental booking. On July 9, 2017, Mr. Greenberg paid Representative Gaetz $1,600 by check. Mr. Greenberg stated the check was reimbursement for a share of the rental. Mr. Greenberg also noted that they met up with another individual for dinner that weekend, and he shared a photo of Representative Gaetz, himself, and the other individual on social media on July 8, 2017. The committee received evidence confirming that Representative Gaetz at times personally made payments to women who attended parties with him and Mr. Greenberg using various peer-to-peer electronic payment services as well as checks and cash. The committee's record also indicates that Mr. Greenberg sometimes paid women for having sex with Representative Gaetz and was sometimes reimbursed by Representative Gaetz. Witnesses indicated that there were times where a lump sum would be sent to one woman who would then distribute the money evenly among others who attended the parties. Likewise, in one instance, Representative Gaetz sent $400 to Mr. Greenberg with the note, quote, "Hit up victim A," end quote. Mr. Greenberg then sent two women payments totaling $400, including victim A. On August 19, 2020, Mr. Greenberg was indicted on charges related to his misuse of motor vehicle records and identification documents in his role as Seminole County tax collector and his attempt to falsely accuse a political opponent of being a pedophile. He was additionally charged with sex trafficking of a child, victim A, wire fraud, bribery of a public official, theft of government property, and related charges. He pleaded guilty to 6 charges, including sex trafficking of victim A in May 2021, but his sentencing was delayed until December 2022 due to his ongoing cooperation in several other matters. As part of his cooperation, he provided information that was ultimately corroborated and ended in successful prosecutions. 2. Representative Gaetz's interactions with women he met through Mr. Greenberg. 1. Transactional nature of the interactions. From 2017 to 2020, Representative Gaetz made tens of thousands of dollars in payments to women that the committee determined were likely in connection with sexual activity and/or drug use. Payments were made to these women using peer-to-peer payment platforms such as PayPal, Venmo, and Cash App. While Representative Gaetz had accounts in his name on each of those platforms, he also sometimes paid women through another person's PayPal account or through an account held under a pseudonymous email account. Representative also paid some of the women by check or in cash. The following chart summarizes payments made by Representative Gaetz to Mr. Greenberg and to women via peer-to-peer payment platforms or checks. Recipient Woman 1, amount $63,836.58, timeframe 2017 to 2020. Recipient Woman 2, amount $4,189.82, timeframe 2019 to 2020. Recipient Woman 3, amount $2,651.69, timeframe 2018 to 2019. Recipient Woman 4, amount $6,198.75, timeframe 2017 to 2019. Recipient Woman 5, amount $4,025.27, timeframe 2018 to 2019. Recipient Woman 6, amount $5,251.23, timeframe 2018 to 2019. Woman 7, amount $200, timeframe 2018. Woman 8, amount $600, timeframe 2017. Woman 9, $1,280, timeframe 2018 to 2020. Woman 10, amount $400, timeframe 2018. Woman 11, amount $500, timeframe 2017. Woman 12, $2,135.48, timeframe 2018 to 2019. Recipient Joel Greenberg, amount $3,950, timeframe 2018 to 2019. The committee's record indicates that Representative Gaetz was in a long-term relationship with Woman 1, and therefore some of the payments may have been of a legitimate nature. However, as discussed further below, Woman 1 asserted her Fifth Amendment right when asked whether the payments to her from Representative Gaetz were for sexual activity and/or drugs, or for her to pass on to others for such purposes. Based on that assertion, combined with evidence received from other sources, the committee found substantial reason to believe that most of these payments were for such activity. The committee was not able to speak with every woman who received payments from Representative Gaetz that were suspected of being part of illicit activity. Several women initially were responsive to the committee's outreach, but later told the committee they would not voluntarily participate. Other women were clear at first contact that they feared retaliation or were unwilling to voluntarily relive their interactions with Representative Gaetz. Due to the women's reluctance to cooperate, as well as the delay caused by DOJ's deferral request and subsequent refusal to provide meaningful cooperation, the committee was unable to determine the full extent to which Representative Gaetz's payments to women were compensation for engaging in sexual activity with him. However, the record before the committee provides substantial reason to believe that many of the payments in the chart above were made in connection with sexual activity and/or illicit drug use. The committee was also not able to quantify the amount of cash payments Representative Gaetz made to women or the amount of payments that other individuals, such as Mr. Greenberg, made on behalf of Representative Gaetz. Representative Gaetz refused to answer questions about his relationships with the women involved. There was, however, evidence that he understood and shared many of the women's transactional views of their arrangements. In one text exchange viewed by the committee, Representative Gaetz balked at a woman's request that he send her money after he accused her of ditching him on a night when she was feeling tired, claiming she only gave him a drive-by. The woman asserted to Representative Gaetz that she was being treated differently than other women he was paying for sex. The committee also obtained text messages in which Representative Gaetz's then-girlfriend informed some of the women who were typically paid for sex that the guys, Representative Gaetz and Mr. Greenberg, wanted me to share that they are a little limited in their cash flow this weekend. Matt was like, if it can be more of a customer appreciation week. A few months later, she noted that, by the way, Matt also mentioned he is going to be a bit generous because of the customer appreciation thing last time. Another woman specifically recalled a conversation with Representative Gaetz about issues with Mr. Greenberg's following through with expected payments after Mr. Greenberg's encounters with her. Mr. Greenberg told the committee that Representative Gaetz was aware that the women they had sex with and paid had met Mr. Greenberg through the sugar dating website. Representative Gaetz did not appear to have negotiated specific payment amounts prior to engaging in sexual activity with the women he paid. Instead, the women had a general expectation that they would typically receive some amount of money after each sexual encounter. In 2017, using a pseudonymous account, Representative Gaetz made payments to women largely without a description of the purpose of the payment. After several months, he began to use other payment accounts, including ones with his own name, using innocuous descriptions to indicate the purpose of the payments. Representative Gaetz did not provide any information regarding the tens of thousands of dollars in payments he made to over a dozen women, despite being offered the opportunity to do so by the committee. Representative Gaetz was provided with a list of women who the committee found received payments from him beginning in 2017 and was asked to inform the committee of the purpose of those payments, as well as to inform the committee how he knew the individual and whether, quote, if you engaged in any sexual activity with the individual, did she ever indicate to you that she expected payment for engaging in sexual activity with you? End quote. Rather than answer the questions, Representative Gaetz asserted incorrectly, quote, you ask in part whether I've had sex with a list of adult women over the past 7 years. The lawful, consensual, sexual activities of adults are not the business of Congress, end quote. Many of the women interviewed by the committee were clear that there was a general expectation of sex. One woman who was paid more than $5,000 by Representative Gaetz between 2018 and 2019 told the committee that, quote, 99% of the time that Representative Gaetz and I were hanging out, there was sex involved, end quote. Text messages obtained by the committee showed that Representative Gaetz would also ask women to bring drugs to their rendezvous, in some instances requesting marijuana cartridges and repaying the women directly, but in other cases requesting a full complement of party favors, vitamins, or rolls. Representative Gaetz sent one woman several $100s for marijuana cartridges. One woman stated that, with respect to a 2018 Bahamas trip, quote, myself and Representative Gaetz's then-girlfriend brought drugs with us, and I do know that Matt supplied his then-girlfriend with money, end quote. Another woman said that she brought cocaine to at least one event with Representative Gaetz, and that she witnessed him taking cocaine or ecstasy on at least 5 occasions. Mr. Greenberg told the committee that he would typically provide drugs, such as ecstasy, for events he attended, and Representative Gaetz would pay him back in cash. Several other women observed Representative Gaetz to be under the influence of drugs. Additionally, nearly every witness interviewed observed Representative Gaetz using marijuana. 2. Selected interactions. Based on the evidentiary record, the committee identified at least 20 occasions from the beginning of 2017 through the middle of 2020 where there was substantial evidence that Representative Gaetz met with women who were paid for sex and/or drugs. The committee also received testimony related to multiple additional events, trips, or parties where Representative Gaetz may have paid women for sex and drugs, although the committee could not determine the specific dates or locations for all of them. To the extent Representative Gaetz paid money to women in connection with those trips, at least some transactions are reflected in the chart discussed in the prior section. One of the women that Mr. Greenberg met on seekingarrangement.com and introduced to Representative Gaetz in or around March 2017 became Representative Gaetz's girlfriend when he was almost 35 and she was 21 years old. Their relationship continued for over 2 years. The relationship was not exclusive, and the committee received evidence that Representative Gaetz's then-girlfriend sometimes participated with him in sexual encounters with other women who were active on the website, or otherwise involved in sex-for-money arrangements. The committee also obtained text messages where she appeared to act as an intermediary between Representative Gaetz and the women he paid for sex. She herself was paid tens of thousands of dollars by Representative Gaetz over the course of their 2-year relationship. She stated, quote, "Matt always paid for anything for me," end quote. However, she invoked her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination in response to several questions, including what the purpose of specific payments was, whether Representative Gaetz ever paid her money for sex, and whether she was aware of Representative Gaetz paying others for sex. She also invoked her Fifth Amendment privilege when asked to explain an increase in payments from Representative Gaetz in 2019, whether any of the payments from Representative Gaetz were related to drugs, and whether payments she received from Mr. Greenberg were related to Representative Gaetz. The committee obtained messages between Mr. Greenberg and a 20-year-old woman he met through seekingarrangement.com who noted, "I usually do $400 per meet." As shown in the following exchange, Mr. Greenberg and the woman made plans to each bring a friend to their meet. The committee found that the language used by the woman and amount proposed were consistent with typical pay-per-meet arrangements made by users of seekingarrangement.com at that time. Messages between Joel Greenberg and 20-year-old female. All messages were sent and received on September 22, 2018. From Joel Greenberg. "If you have a friend that is down, perhaps all 4 of us can meet up later. Do you party at all?" From 20-year-old female. "Oh, that's perfect. I have a friend who introduced me to the website that I could bring. She's very pretty, great personality. I usually do $400 per meet. Does your friend use the website as well? And yes, I do like to go out sometimes." From Joel Greenberg. "Very cool. Yes, he understands the deal. What does your friend look like? $400 is not a problem. Are you both old enough to drink?" From 20-year-old female, "So what do you have in mind for tonight?" From Joel Greenberg, a cell phone photo of Matt Gaetz captioned, "My friend." From 20-year-old female, "Ooh, my friend thinks he's really cute." From Joel Greenberg, "Well, he's down here only for the day. We work hard and play hard. Have you ever tried Molly?" End of conversation. Evidence reviewed by the committee shows that, on several occasions, Representative Gaetz met with the woman who corresponded with Mr. Greenberg in these messages. He continues to follow her on social media and has paid her more than $2,000 since late 2018. The committee received evidence indicating that the 20-year-old woman in the above messages joined Mr. Greenberg and Representative Gaetz at a hotel in Florida less than 2 weeks after her initial encounter with Representative Gaetz. The committee's record indicates that Representative Gaetz also invited another woman who he regularly paid for sex to meet him at the hotel without disclosing to her that others would be present. The other woman, who was 21 years old, had recently asked the congressman for his help with her tuition. She recalled that Representative Gaetz agreed and told her to meet him at that hotel room where he would provide her with a check which, according to the woman, quote, "was interesting because he had normally sent Venmo payments," end quote. When she arrived to pick up the check, she found Mr. Greenberg and the 20-year-old woman present. The 21-year-old woman told the committee there was an expectation of a sexual encounter. The four of them had sex, and afterwards Representative Gaetz gave her a $750 check made out to cash with tuition reimbursement in the memo line, which she deposited the next day to help pay her tuition. The 21-year-old woman told the committee she believed that the encounter, quote, could potentially be a form of coercion because I really needed the money, end quote. Representative Gaetz's financial records confirm that he wrote the check and that he was present at the hotel identified by the woman on the date identified by the woman. As another example, the committee obtained text messages that appeared to show Representative Gaetz messaging a woman he knew through Mr. Greenberg, inviting her to travel on a private plane to Key West from May 19th to 21st, 2017 with, quote, 2 guys, 4 girls, a very high-quality, adventurous group, end quote. She initially responded, yeah, I'm in, to which Representative Gaetz stated, fantastic. As is true, with all the time you spend with me, it'll be fun and very chill. The same woman was photographed with Representative Gaetz on May 19, 2017 in Orlando. The photograph depicts Representative Gaetz in a casual shirt with his arm around her in a dimly lit bar. She was also photographed in front of a helicopter with 3 other women associated with Representative Gaetz around the same time, including his then-girlfriend. After the committee obtained copies of the text messages and selfie photo, there was public reporting about the evidence. In response to the reporting, Representative Gaetz's spokesperson released a statement asserting that, quote, Representative Gaetz does not know anything about the woman you're referencing, though he takes thousands of selfies each year, end quote. Payment records reviewed by the committee, however, show that Representative Gaetz paid $600 to the woman the same day he was photographed with her. In February 2018, Mr. Greenberg introduced Representative Gaetz to 2 women with accounts on seekingarrangement.com. They were generally older than the other women that Mr. Greenberg had previously introduced to Representative Gaetz, and they had a slightly different relationship with the 2 men. They were the only women paid by Representative Gaetz who denied to the committee that the payments they received from the congressman were compensation for engaging in sexual activity. One of the women, who was 25 years old when she met Representative Gaetz, testified that she understood herself to be more sophisticated than some other women on seekingarrangement.com. In contrast with the women who almost exclusively interacted with Representative Gaetz in hotel rooms or at private parties, this woman attended events as Representative Gaetz's date, for which she was paid between $500 and $1,000 per event. She also stated that she did not feel pressured to have sex with Representative Gaetz and only did so on some occasions. She told the committee that, in December 2019, Representative Gaetz had his congressional assistant arrange travel for her to Washington, D.C. for one night. According to the woman, she attended a dinner with Representative Gaetz and a few other individuals. She stayed overnight at a hotel with Representative Gaetz and had sex with him. Representative Gaetz sent the woman $1,000 around that time. The woman told the committee she was paid to be his date and that sex was not necessarily an expectation. The other older woman, who was 27 years old when she met Representative Gaetz, was the only woman interviewed by the committee who did not view their relationship as transactional in nature. The first time she met Representative Gaetz, however, she had sex with him and was paid $1,000 by Mr. Greenberg, which she understood to have been at Representative Gaetz's direction. She told the committee that she viewed her relationship with Representative Gaetz as more or less dating, although it was never anything serious. She said she was not familiar with his then-girlfriend and said she was not aware that he was also having a sexual relationship with her friend, the 25-year-old woman. She frequently commented on his social media, and he still follows her on social media. Most of the sex-for-money encounters that the committee reviewed occurred in Florida, particularly around Orlando. Several of the women involved were students based in that area. On several occasions, however, Representative Gaetz did travel with women that he paid for sex. On September 13, 2018, Representative Gaetz, 2 other men, and 6 women traveled to the Bahamas. Representative Gaetz arrived by commercial plane later than the others, who arrived on private planes. The group stayed at a vacation rental booked and paid for by one of the male travelers. The attendees stated that this was a social trip. They sunbathed, chartered a boat, and went to dinners and to a casino as a group. Representative Gaetz engaged in sexual activity with at least 4 of the women on the trip. Several of the women recalled that Representative Gaetz appeared to be under the influence of drugs and that they took ecstasy during this trip. One woman said she witnessed Representative Gaetz taking ecstasy as well. Most, if not all, of the women involved had some history of sexual interactions with Representative Gaetz for which they had been paid. While there were no specific payments to the women in connection with the Bahamas trip, according to one woman, the trip itself was more so the payment. The group returned to Orlando on September 16, 2018. Representative Gaetz flew on a private plane with another man and 3 women, while the remaining individuals flew on another private plane. Representative Gaetz paid for 2 women to travel to New York City in January 2019 to meet up with him and his then-girlfriend. The committee reviewed text messages in which Representative Gaetz asked the women about obtaining drugs in advance of the trip, stating, "Who can help with party favors?" In addition to paying for their travel costs, the committee received evidence that Representative Gaetz sent the women money to compensate them for sexual activities they engaged in with him during the trip. While all the women that the committee interviewed stated their sexual activity with Representative Gaetz was consensual, at least one woman felt that the use of drugs at the parties and events they attended may have, quote, impaired their ability to really know what was going on or fully consent, end quote. Indeed, nearly every woman that the committee spoke with could not remember the details of at least one or more of the events they attended with Representative Gaetz and attributed that to drug or alcohol consumption. The women also discussed instances where Representative Gaetz would try to convince them to have sex with him or Mr. Greenberg. Quote, "He would make me feel bad about not having sex with him or Joel Greenberg," end quote, and that he would say, quote, "Why don't you want to have sex with me?" end quote, or, quote, "Mr. Greenberg looks very sad over there. Make him happy," end quote. Another woman said that their relationship at some point was a loving friendship, but over time came to feel like a task. A third woman said, "When I look back on certain moments, I feel violated." One woman said, quote, "I think about it all the time. I still see him when I turn on the TV and there's nothing anyone can do. It's frustrating to know I lived a reality that he denies," end quote. 3. Representative Gaetz's interactions with the minor he met through Mr. Greenberg. Numerous witnesses told the committee that, on July 15, 2017, Representative Gaetz attended a party at Mr. Dorwith's home. This party was also attended by Mr. Greenberg, Representative Gaetz's then-girlfriend, and several others, including Victim A, who was 17 years old at the time. The record overwhelmingly suggests that Representative Gaetz had sex with multiple women at the party, including the then 17-year-old for which they were paid. Mr. Dorwith testified that Representative Gaetz was a frequent guest at his home. To enter the community where Mr. Dorwith lives, non-residents are required to present a driver's license before entering, and entry records are maintained. Mr. Dorwith believed that Representative Gaetz invited people to his home on the evening of July 15, 2017. Likewise, Representative Gaetz's then-girlfriend provided an affidavit in the civil litigation stating that she and Representative Gaetz attended the July 15, 2017 party at the Dorwith residence. The committee received testimony that Victim A and Representative Gaetz had sex twice during the party, including at least once in the presence of other party attendees. Victim A recalled receiving $400 in cash from Representative Gaetz that evening, which she understood to be payment for sex. At the time, she had just completed her junior year of high school. Victim A said that she did not inform Representative Gaetz that she was under 18 at the time, nor did he ask her age. The committee did not receive any evidence indicating that Representative Gaetz was aware that Victim A was a minor when he had sex with her. Victim A acknowledged that she was under the influence of ecstasy during her sexual encounters with Representative Gaetz at the July 15, 2017 party, and recalled seeing Representative Gaetz use cocaine at that party. Victim A told the committee she was certain of her sexual encounters with Representative Gaetz on that night. As discussed further below, Representative Gaetz generally denied engaging in sexual activity with a minor, but refused to answer specific questions relating to his interactions with Victim A. On August 2, 2024, Representative Gaetz sent the committee a copy of a social media post from Mr. Dorwith regarding his lawsuit against Victim A, in which he had accused her of being part of a conspiracy to defame him. In that post, Mr. Dorwith discussed his recent settlement with Victim A, in which no funds were exchanged. He asserted that he had succeeded in proving that Victim A lied about him and that, quote, "She didn't just lie about me, she lied about Gaetz as well in a federal criminal investigation that resulted in no charges against the congressman because our false accuser has no credibility and had no evidence for the crime that didn't occur," end quote. The same day, Mr. Dorwith revised his post, after Victim A's attorneys contacted his attorneys, to remove his claim that he succeeded in proving the Victim A had lied but maintaining his assertion that she falsely accused Representative Gaetz. Mr. Dorwith testified to the committee that he himself was not present for the July 15, 2017 party at his own home, despite Victim A's assertions to the contrary. After the committee's interview, and after he settled his lawsuit against Victim A, Mr. Dorwith was deposed and confronted with cell phone records showing that he was, in fact, at his residence during the party. Mr. Dorwith stated, quote, "I don't have an answer to these questions," end quote. And, quote, "I am not going to opine on cell phone data when I don't know anything about it. I don't know. I do not believe I was there. There could be a million reasons for that," end quote. As the questions about his cell phone pinging from a tower less than a mile from his home continued, Mr. Dorwith became irritated, informing the attorney, quote, "I'm telling you that I was not at that party, so if you believe those phone records somehow impute that I was or that they make it just undeniable, then that is certainly your belief," end quote. The committee requested, through counsel, that Mr. Dorwith clarify his testimony regarding his whereabouts on the evening of July 15, 2017. His counsel did not respond. 4. Representative Gaetz's response to the allegations of sexual misconduct and illicit drug use. Representative Gaetz categorically stated to the committee that the allegations he, quote, "may have engaged in sexual misconduct, including violations of federal laws relating to sex trafficking and state laws relating to prostitution and statutory rape," end quote, were, quote, "false, and that these allegations were investigated by the Department of Justice and the investigation was completely dropped," end quote. He also repeatedly, incorrectly stated that the DOJ investigation exonerated him. Representative Gaetz did not provide any explanation for his assertion that the allegations of state law violations were false, even though those violations were not within the jurisdiction of DOJ. He also denied the allegations that he used illicit drugs. The committee provided Representative Gaetz with the names of 15 women who were alleged to have received payments from him or on his behalf relating to sexual misconduct and illicit drug use, as well as the approximate payment amounts and transaction years, but he did not provide any explanation for those payments. Representative Gaetz responded publicly to allegations that his payments to women were for sex by stating that, quote, "someone is trying to recategorize my generosity to ex-girlfriends as something more untoward," end quote. He also repeatedly denied having ever paid for sex. When given the opportunity to put that assertion in writing in this matter, however, Representative Gaetz refused to respond, asserting that, quote, "asking about his sexual history as a single man with adult women is a bridge too far," end quote. Representative Gaetz did broadly address the allegation that he engaged in sexual activity with a minor. He asserted in his September 26, 2024 letter to the committee, quote, "Your correspondence of September 4th asks whether I have engaged in sexual activity with any individual under 18. The answer to this question is unequivocally no. You can apply this response to every version of this question in every forum," end quote. The committee's September 4th letter, however, specifically asked him whether he was present at the July 15, 2017 party at Mr. Dorwith's, whether he ever engaged in sexual activity with Victim A and when, and whether he ever gave Victim A money, directly or indirectly, and if so, for what purpose. Representative Gaetz did not answer any of those questions. B. Allegations relating to the House gift rule. In 2021, news outlets reported that federal investigators were reviewing the 2018 Bahamas trip. According to these reports, the trip was paid for by an associate of Representative Gaetz with connections to the medical marijuana industry, who allegedly also paid for female escorts to accompany them on the trip. The only other male attendee was also connected to the medical marijuana industry. According to press reports, DOJ was investigating allegations that the trip may have been part of an illegal influence effort on behalf of the medical marijuana industry. As discussed above, the Bahamas trip took place from September 13th to 16th, 2018, and included Representative Gaetz, 2 other men, and 6 women. Representative Gaetz flew on a commercial airline from Washington, D.C. to the Bahamas on September 13th, 2018. Representative Gaetz's associate paid for a vacation rental for the group, but told the committee that Representative Gaetz paid for various expenses in the Bahamas, such as meals, and that these expenses covered Representative Gaetz's share of the vacation rental. No other individuals recalled whether Representative Gaetz paid for their meals, vacation rental, or other activities on this trip, with the exception of his then-girlfriend. No one recalled Representative Gaetz making cash payments, and his bank statements and credit card records do not show any transactions on these dates occurring in the Bahamas, nor large withdrawals of cash during or in advance of the trip. On September 16, 2018, Representative Gaetz flew on his associate's private plane from the Bahamas to Orlando, along with 3 female passengers between 20 to 29 years old. C. Allegations related to misuse of official resources. As discussed above, in early 2018, Representative Gaetz met a woman through Mr. Greenberg. The same night they met, they had sex, and Mr. Greenberg sent her money. At that first meeting, the woman also told Representative Gaetz she needed a new passport for an upcoming trip. She did not initially know Representative Gaetz was a congressman, but he connected her with his then chief of staff who worked with the State Department's congressional liaison to secure a passport appointment for the woman within days of their first meeting. An individual from the Department of State, Miami Passport Agency, sent the chief of staff an email confirming an appointment for your constituent, which the chief of staff then forwarded to the woman who lived in Orlando, Florida, outside of Representative Gaetz's congressional district. The woman acknowledged to the committee that the money she received from Mr. Greenberg was sent on behalf of Representative Gaetz, but denied that the money was compensation for their sexual encounter. Instead, she said the $1,000 she received from Mr. Greenberg was to assist her with transportation costs to go to the Miami Passport Office from Orlando. The woman spent $195 to obtain her new passport prior to her trip, a standard $60 fee for an in-person appointment, plus $135 for the passport. She continued to meet up with Representative Gaetz on other occasions, during which they engaged in sexual activity. The committee reviewed other records relating to passport assistance requests from the Office of Representative Gaetz. It was unusual for the Chief of Staff to process requests for expedited passports from constituents. Those casework matters were typically handled by district staff. The committee also received evidence that Representative Gaetz tasked the Chief of Staff with assisting Mr. Greenberg on occasion. The Chief of Staff was no longer employed in Representative Gaetz's office at the time of the committee's review and did not respond to communications from the committee. D. Obstruction of the committee's investigation. On May 23, 2023, the committee informed Representative Gaetz that it had reauthorized an investigation into several allegations, including sexual misconduct and illicit drug use, and sent Representative Gaetz a narrowly tailored request for information seeking specific documents related to allegations squarely within the committee's jurisdiction, namely, violations related to the House gift rule or bribery and improper images on the House floor. The request for information also asked for any other information that you believe may be relevant to the matter as a whole. In response, Representative Gaetz began sending letters to the chairman and ranking member asserting, among other things, that the committee's requests for a 2-week response time and signed declaration under oath, both of which are standard practice for the committee, were unreasonable and that he was being treated differently than other members of Congress. Representative Gaetz indicated that the committee's request was overly burdensome, as he would need to sort through 6 years' worth of records across various accounts. In these letters, he also began making demands of the committee in exchange for his good faith cooperation, while suggesting that the committee was being weaponized against him for various changing reasons. The chairman and ranking member granted Representative Gaetz an extension through August 11, 2023, to respond to the request for information and explained the committee's standard practices. Representative Gaetz missed the deadline and stated he would only produce documents in person at his district office. The chairman and ranking member responded again, giving him an extension through September 28, 2023, to comply with the request for information and reiterating the committee's standard practices. Representative Gaetz again missed the deadline, ultimately producing 3 pages that were not fully responsive to the request for information on October 2, 2023. In his response, Representative Gaetz produced his boarding passes and itinerary used for the 2018 Bahamas trip, which he also stated he paid for personally. However, the boarding passes and itinerary only show his flight to the Bahamas and not his return. As discussed above, Representative Gaetz flew out of the Bahamas via private plane. Representative Gaetz intentionally omitted information relating to his return transportation, indicating in later correspondence that because the committee's request was for documents, quote, related to actual or planned travel to the Bahamas, end quote, emphasis added, he should not be expected to have produced records of his transportation from that location. When the committee noted that any documents involving his transportation from the Bahamas were clearly related to the travel at issue, his response made clear that he was not willing to provide good faith responses. Quote, "Does the committee also have interest in every dollar I spent in the Bahamas on food, refreshments, and other travel provisions, such as sunscreen? I ask because your request is unclear, unrelated to House rules, and more than a bit nosy. I can represent to the committee that no funds of mine were expended in the Bahamas for illicit drug use or sexual misconduct." End quote. Despite frequently suggesting he had insufficient opportunities to respond to the allegations against him, Representative Gaetz sent more than a dozen letters to the chairman and ranking member throughout the committee's review. In addition to alleging that the committee's process was being weaponized against him, Representative Gaetz repeatedly alleged that the committee members and staff were leaking information to the press, that the committee's nonpartisan staff were actually acting as Democrats, or that the committee was working on behalf of former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. He also demanded to know the sources of the allegations against him and argued that the committee's investigation should be closed because the DOJ had exonerated him. On May 20, 2024, the committee requested Representative Gaetz provide availability for an interview to be conducted sometime in the first 2 weeks of June. The interview would be an opportunity for Representative Gaetz to answer questions about and respond to the allegations. In that letter, the committee appended a fulsome list of allegations involving Representative Gaetz to ensure his awareness of all allegations before the committee. On May 24, 2024, Representative Gaetz responded to the committee's letter. He demanded the committee investigate leaks to the press prior to him submitting for an interview and argued, incorrectly, that the committee could not subpoena his testimony unless it impaneled an investigative subcommittee. He also referred to voluminous documentary evidence he produced to the committee that he claimed showed his innocence and categorically denied all the allegations. On June 17, 2024, the committee informed Representative Gaetz that it would be both expanding and narrowing the scope of its investigation into allegations involving him. The letter also requested evidence that DOJ had exonerated him, any records previously produced to DOJ, and any other documents he believed the committee should have already received comprising the voluminous evidence he claimed to have provided. Finally, the letter reiterated the committee's request that Representative Gaetz appear for a voluntary interview and reminded him that, pursuant to committee rules, it would consider whether to use compulsory process to obtain his testimony. Representative Gaetz responded on June 24, 2024, stating that he would need additional time to review, quote, over 10,000 records, end quote, he had previously submitted to DOJ. He also reiterated his requests that the committee provide him with confidential information about its investigative sources, as well as regarding any investigation of disclosures in the press. He then publicly called the committee's investigation frivolous and said it was an obvious fact that every investigation into me ends the same way, my exoneration. Representative Gaetz ultimately produced some additional documents to the committee through early September, although it is not clear how many of those documents had been previously produced to DOJ. The committee also invited Representative Gaetz to clarify the relevancy of the records he produced, most of which did not appear to be responsive to the committee's request, to which he stated only that he was prioritizing the evidence that most clearly proved his innocence. Representative Gaetz also falsely stated in a letter to the committee, which he shared in a public social media post, that he had, quote, voluntarily produced tens of thousands of records, end quote. To the contrary, Representative Gaetz provided only a couple hundred records, more than 90% of which was either irrelevant or publicly available. Despite multiple extensions from the committee to review and produce responsive records from the 10,000 he claimed he would review, Representative Gaetz ultimately declared he would, quote, no longer cooperate, end quote, with the committee in the public letter. The committee also reviewed allegations that Representative Gaetz may have sought to tamper with witness testimony in connection with its investigation or the DOJ's investigation. DOJ refused to provide a copy of an audio recording in which Representative Gaetz discussed the DOJ's inquiry with one of the women he paid for sex. While the committee did not find documentary evidence that Representative Gaetz directly acted to prevent any woman from testifying before DOJ or the committee, some women cited a fear of retaliation from the congressman when declining to speak on the record with the committee. This concludes this episode of The Docket. I hope you enjoyed this episode. For updates on The Docket, please visit DocketPod.com or find us on Threads as DocketPod. If you found this useful or interesting, please consider subscribing to The Docket and supporting my Patreon at patreon.com/DocketPod. Thank you.